Before moving on to part 2 of the story, please let me know your opinion. Do you like the story long or short, a series or separate parts? The comments section is always welcome, and don't forget to subscribe our channel. Please pass me the papers you need signed, and I'll sign them and get out of your way. Bailey slid a stack of papers across the table. They moved smoothly to my side. Bailey and crew had kindly marked every spot where I needed to sign. There were about 100 of them. My skin tingled as I felt eyes watching me. Finally, I finished and looked up at Gutman. His face showed a mix of strong dislike and the joy similar to a kid on Christmas morning finding a pony under the tree. I pushed the papers back up the table and got to my feet. This had been the longest day ever, and I had places to go. I turned to leave without looking at Deirdre when Maitland stood up to block my way. "I'm done, Mr. Maitland. We're finished. I need to go." "McCarthy, don't just walk out like this." "That's nice of you, Maitland. I didn't know you cared. But I have plans. I took a big risk for you. I went against my own feelings and let you take control of the investigation so we couldn't find your wife. I could have brought Bailey and Wilkes in, but I let them walk to protect you. I let you get away with things I wouldn't let anyone else do. I did all that hoping for a chance to get justice for a victim. And then you pull this?" He stepped back to let me pass if I really wanted to leave. "What's done is done. I can't go after Bailey or Wilkes or anyone else. You're going to leave empty-handed and in a bad situation. So please, can you at least tell me why you did this?" He had gone above and beyond for me. I wanted to walk away without revealing the truth to Deirdre. I wanted to keep that a secret, but he deserved to know. I took the tape recorder out of my pocket, fast-forwarded it to the next part, placed it on the table, turned the volume up, and pressed play. Deirdre's voice came first, soft and relaxed. "Oh my God, Julie, you need to slow down. I don't think my heart can take much more." "Oh, you can handle it. Just give me another 30 minutes and we'll see." There were some strange sounds. "You won't get those 30 minutes if you keep making those noises. You taste amazing." "I wish I didn't have to go back to the hotel tonight. When is Oil Boy coming back? Tomorrow?" "He's supposed to come back tomorrow, but sometimes he arrives early, so you have to leave tonight. Why do we have to keep doing this? Why don't you just divorce him? Then we can be together openly. You know why. I'd get divorced tomorrow, but if we do, he gets the $10 million. I'm not going to do that." "Absolutely not. I know the money doesn't matter to you, but $10 million is a lot. I can't let him just take that. Uncle Mort is figuring it out. He's smart. He'll find a way. You're making this way too hard. If he's gone, we don't need to worry about the money. No. Come on. He could be driving home, stop for gas, and a robber could sneak up, take his wallet, and that's it. I know guys who would do it for $10,000. Then we'd have no problems." "No, Julian, I've told you before, don't even think like that." "Why not? It would be so easy." "No, I'm not going to kill someone or let you do it. Michael isn't a bad person. It's not his fault that I don't love him or that my dad put that prenuptial agreement in place, and he loves me." Okay, I was just saying it out loud. I wouldn't really do anything." "Don't. You need to know. There are cameras all over the house and yard. Dad had them put in. If anything ever happens to Michael, an accident, a mugging, I'll show the police those recordings. They'll hear the threats you've made about him." You would tell the police on me? And go against me? Me? I wouldn't want to. I love you and want to build a life with you. It would hurt so much, but I would do it. I want you to understand I'm serious about this. You'd do that even though it would hurt you too? The cops would want to blame you more than me? You think they'd believe that I did it alone? You'd lie about me? I cheated on my husband. I came back to you even after I promised my dad I wouldn't. I lost our baby for you even though it broke my heart. How could you do that? How could sending me to jail for wanting us to be together be right? But not by killing Michael. Michael. Julian, stop. That hurts. Let go. Look at me. You get a certain look on your face when you say his name. I can see it in your eyes. Tell me the truth. Do you love him? Julian, stop. You're hurting me. Tell me the truth. If you love him, I'll take care of it myself. I don't care if I go to jail. I'll end him myself. He may seem strong, but one bullet and he won't be tough anymore. I don't... Stop lying. I've always known. I hate that you're with him. I can't stand that you've been with him for 2 years. Just be honest with me. Julian, he's a good man. We've been close for 2 years. A woman can't share a bed with a man like that and not get feelings. Do I love him? Maybe. But I definitely have feelings for him. I can't change how I feel about this. But I don't love him the way I love you. You are my first love, and I want you to be my last. You have to trust that. Make me believe it. Oh, I think I can do that. I pressed the stop button on the recorder. I looked at the recorder instead of facing Deirdre. I didn't want to see her expression. You still love me, she said softly. Her words pulled my gaze to her, and I saw something I didn't want to see. Pity. I'm sorry, Michael. I don't love you anymore, Deirdre. The moment I heard you with him, I stopped loving you. But you were ready to go to jail for me. That's fair. I don't want to see you locked up. I turned to Wilson and Teller and said, Thank you for your help. Then I reached out to Maitland. He shook my hand. Thanks for everything, Mr. Maitland. I hope I answered your questions. Yeah. Where are you going now? Far away from here. I doubt I'll see you again. Good luck. I reached the door. Deirdre, don't ever try to contact me again. If you die before I do, don't have anyone reach out to me. I won't come. Today, you are dead to me. I walked out, and in 3 hours I had left the continental United States. April 17, 2009. Luis gave me a nod from behind the bar. It was Friday, but many regulars hadn't come. Guatemala, especially in the port cities like Puerto Barrios, was struggling. The American recession of 2008 felt like a full-blown depression here in Central America. Many shipping jobs that used to bring money to Puerto Barrios were gone. Bars like Luis's El Dorado, which used to do well with locals and Americans, were barely staying open. My friends and I were doing our part to keep Luis's bar alive. The drinks were decent, and the local women were pleasant to see. The place was always good for playing poker, and we could keep up with the news through the TV with CNN. Overall, while I looked into rumors about a possible oil field a few miles off the coast, it was a nice place to relax. Luis had connections, so he usually knew what was happening in the area. I excused myself from a poker game with some local guys and a pretty woman wearing a sheer blouse which showed off a lot. Maria lightly touched my thigh, and even though she didn't get too close, I started to feel excited. Don't be gone long, she said with a heavy accent. How could I stay away from you? I replied in Spanish. That made her smile, and I felt my heart race. Poker was just for fun. We wouldn't lose much if we didn't push the gangsters too hard. They were usually nice as long as they weren't losing a lot of money. My 2 friends and I were ready for trouble, which made it unlikely they would bother us. It wasn't worth the hassle for such small gains. But then there was Maria. She was going to make this night special. It might cost me a bit because the main gangster might be her boyfriend or husband. Still, I thought it would be worth it. It had been a while since I had been with a woman. There were clean rooms upstairs for a good price. I planned to be in one of those rooms with Maria soon. Luis? Luis was about 40, but he looked much older. He had a long, thin face and bags under his eyes, which made him look tired all the time. There are people looking for you, he said. Really? When people searched for me, it could mean good or bad news. Mostly it was bad. I tried to avoid trouble with married women, but sometimes things went wrong. Business deals could fall through, and some people didn't think ahead. They wanted their money back right away. There weren't too many patient business people anywhere, especially down here. In the U.S. and Canada, unhappy business people sent lawsuits. Here, they sent men with guns. 2 Americans. They dress well. One is older with dark hair, and the other is younger with silver hair. Luis laughed. They might as well wear signs saying rich North Americans. They'll probably not last long here, but they have 3 bodyguards. One is really big and well-armed. He's British. This caught my attention. I doubted it was who I thought, but it was strange. Anything else? They're spending money like crazy. They'll come in soon. I reached into my money belt and took out a $100 bill. We often gave Luis money to show our thanks. Gracias, he waved it off. De nada. As I walked back to my table, Ben Overhauser stepped in my way. He had been my right-hand man for 5 years. Something up? He asked. Not sure. 2 Americans are looking for me, and they've got 3 bodyguards. Do you want to stay here, or should we get out of sight? We can find out more about them before we meet. I think I know who they are. I just wonder why they're here. I had a bad feeling. What if something terrible had happened to Deirdre? Maybe the company thought I should know. I had chosen to walk away and leave her behind, but she wouldn't stay gone. I didn't want to think about it. Over the last 5 years, I had wished many bad things on her, but I never wished for her to die. As Maitland had said, I was just foolish. I sat back down, and Maria started to touch me. Her partner, Macario, and 2 of his friends looked at her for a moment before focusing back on the table. A deck of cards was ready for the next game. There were about $100 in $1 bills and coins, with a few fives mixed in with the players. We never played for big money. Macario's friends knew that if they tried to raise the stakes to $5 a hand or more, we would just stop the game and go back to drinking. Too much money on the table was a bad idea for everyone. Overhauser carried an AK-47 slung over his left shoulder, always ready to use. He had been a soldier before, and like many pros, he trusted the AK-47. He believed it never jammed and worked with nearly any kind of bullet. It was known for its strength in many battles around the world. On his side, he carried a Clap Colt 1911.45 with 20 bullets, and in a shoulder holster, he had a Glock 31 and extra bullets in a bandolier. He had only had to use his gun a few times in the 5 years I had known him, but he always looked ready for a fight. Ray Wendell had a short shotgun called a Mossberg 500, great for stopping fights in close places. He also had a Glock 17L pistol with a 17-bullet magazine and a Sig Sauer P320 on his hip, also with a 17-bullet magazine. As for me, I carried an FNX 45 revolver with 16 powerful bullets. If it didn't kill someone, it would leave them wishing they were dead. I kept it in a holster on my right hip. I could touch its metal and fire it without taking it out of the holster. Maria would sometimes touch it while she touched other parts of me, but I didn't think she would want to shoot me, and she couldn't take it away from me. I also carried a small Bond Ranger Derringer that fired 2 big shots, along with a Patriot 45 and a Stinger SS. I had only had to shoot 1 person in the past year, and he was shocked when the small gun took a huge chunk out of his chest. He wasn't interested in talking about our problems like decent people. Life in Guatemala wasn't as violent as it seemed, but looking tough had worked for us so far. I took another sip of whiskey while Macario complained about his bad luck at the table. He went on about how hard it was for a worker in Guatemala to make a living. Sometimes his goons would make comments, aware that I was listening. I could tell he knew I heard what he and his men were saying. People came and went. There were 4 gangsters at first, and then 5, moving from the bar to buy drinks for some girls and heading for the restrooms. I wasn't really scared, but I started to feel uneasy about the night. Maria stood next to me and softly leaned against my ear. Her breath smelled sweet, and it felt nice to have her close. She told me in both English and Spanish how strong I felt and how much she wanted to go upstairs with me. I knew I was just a job for her, a way to make money. The idea of a kind-hearted woman like her is as rare as a unicorn, but I couldn't help but feel drawn to her. We all fall under a woman's spell. I asked her to bring me another whiskey. As she walked away, I looked at Overhauser and Wendell tapping my fancy watch. They nodded back. We needed to finish things soon and leave. I looked back at Macario and saw him eyeing my watch. It was foolish to show off in front of someone like him, but this watch was special to me. My father had always wanted one, but he never bought it when he had the chance. When I could finally afford it, I bought it right away. I had worn it for 5 years, and I would only take it off when I was no longer alive. He smiled at me, but it wasn't a friendly smile. He wanted my watch and was thinking about how to take it from me and my 2 well-armed friends. Michael McCarthy, you are hard to find. The noise in the bar stopped. Overhauser and Wendell kept a close watch on Macario and his men. I turned and wasn't surprised to see Hugh Davidson and Matt Henry at the bar. Behind Henry were the large Harper Stevens and 2 other men who looked like bodyguards. Macario and his guys studied the newcomers. Just as Luis had said, Davidson and Henry looked like they had American money, and that scent was like blood to sharks. I knew I had to get them out of here before things turned violent. I walked toward them as casually as I could, even though I felt tense. Davidson, Henry, it's been a long time. Why don't you guys come to our hotel room? We can talk about why you're here. Davidson reached out to shake my hand and said, "That works. We didn't want to interrupt your conversation." As he shook my hand, I noticed that the fancy bag he had with him was handcuffed to his wrist. It felt like time stopped. I quickly looked at Macario. He had noticed too. He pulled out 2 short guns, one in each hand, and yelled at his men. Bullets started hitting the bar, and bottles crashed behind it. I pushed Davidson away, hoping he would crouch down. I pulled out my FNX gun and started shooting as fast as I could. Time started moving again, but it felt slow. Macario was pushed back by my shots, and his bullets went everywhere. Maria started screaming and fell to the ground. I had the feeling she was used to gunfights. Wendell aimed his shotgun. Even when one of Macario's men pointed an old gun at him, Wendell fired. The blast knocked the small man against the back wall of the bar. I heard more shots behind me. Harper Stevens and the other 2 bodyguards were shooting back at 2 more of Macario's gang. Then everything went crazy as Overhauser, who had dropped to the floor during the shooting, opened fire with an AK-47, hitting the back of the bar with a storm of bullets. The action around me was still catching up to full speed. I saw Macario hit the wall, then get hit by the AK-47 shots. 4 of Macario's men flew in different directions. After the loud noise, there was silence. I saw people sobbing and trying to get up. Then I looked down at Davidson, who I had pushed to the floor. He was holding a Glock, aiming right at my chest. There was no time to think. I threw myself to the left, trying to get out of the way. As I fell, Davidson fired 3 shots at the spot I had just left. He lowered his gun, and I let myself breathe again. I looked where he had shot. Another man from Macario's crew dropped to the floor, his 2 guns falling from his hands. "Sorry, McCarthy. I saw him and couldn't warn you. I'm glad you're quick." Harper Stevens walked over to the dead man and turned him over. He looked back at Davidson. "Are you military, Mr. Davidson? A long time ago? You must have kept up with your practice. 3 shots to the heart, all in the size of a $50. I don't know many people who could handle a situation like this. They might have sent you to protect me." I deal with problem situations for the bank. I have training for tough times. I used to be a military police officer in Berlin in the 1970s when it was a rough place. I guess it's just part of who I am now. Luis peeked over the bar. "You're going to owe me a lot, McCarthy." He looked around the building. There were 6 dead men on the floor. Maria was bent over Macario, crying. 5 customers who had come for drinks stood up, unsure if they should run for the exit. Henry knelt in a corner. I saw he was staring at one of the bodyguards lying on the floor. Getting closer, I noticed a bullet hole in the middle of the man's forehead. Blood was starting to pool around him. I placed my hand on Henry's shoulder. "Are you okay, Henry?" He was quiet for a moment, and then looked at me with tears in his eyes. "He saved me when the shooting started. He died for me. No one has ever done that before." Harper Stevens was beside me. "That's what he was paid to do, Mr. Henry. Anyone who works as a bodyguard knows this is part of the job. He was well paid and knew the risks." "His name was Goldberg, Tommy Goldberg. He has a wife and 2 kids back in Jacksonville." Harper Stevens leaned closer and spoke softly. "This is the first time you've seen someone die like this, in real life." Henry just nodded. "It's not like the movies," Harper Stevens said. "It's real." He grabbed Henry by the arms and helped him to his feet, pushing him toward Luis and the bar. He raised 2 fingers and Luis filled 2 glasses with whiskey. He just nodded at me and stood Henry against the bar, picking up one of the shot glasses and handing it to him. "The first thing you do is drink 2 shots of whiskey, and then however many more you need. If you want to throw up or cry, go ahead. Just remember to keep moving. Things will seem easier tomorrow." Davidson looked around as he stood up. "We need to leave. We have 6 dead locals and 1 American. I really don't want to explain this to the local police when they get here." Wendell and Overhauser came toward us. Wendell was leaning on Overhauser. I noticed blood on his shirt and dripping down his chest. Wendell looked pale but was still standing. "Are you going to be okay?" Wendell nodded. "The guy was faster than I thought, but I'll be all right. It doesn't feel like my shoulder is broken. O says the bullet went straight through. We can run down the coast and reach a clinic in a couple of hours." "I can last that long." He turned to me and asked, "What about you?" Wendell touched my face with his finger. When he pulled it back, I saw blood on it. I touched my cheek. Pain hit me a moment later. There was a deep cut from my ear to the edge of my mouth. Wow, I guess I used up all my luck for the next 5 years. No, Overhauser said. You used up all your luck for the next 25 years. He reached up and checked my head. When he took his finger away, it was covered in blood. What the heck? I hesitated, but then I touched my head. It wasn't a deep cut, just a scratch, but it was bleeding a lot. As I moved my fingers over my forehead, I wiped the blood that was dripping down over my left eye. I don't know how you avoided getting killed twice by less than an inch in that fight, Overhauser said. If we ever go to war again, I want to be behind you. I didn't want to think about how close I was to death, so I walked over to the bar and asked Luis, how much will it cost to make these bodies disappear without telling the police, and fix all the damage? Can you make this go away? Luis looked at the bodies, the bullet holes, the broken chairs, the 5 witnesses in the corner, and Maria kneeling over Macario's body. $10,000. Cash. Now. Done. I reached into my belt and pulled out 10 neat $1,000 bills. Then I took out one more 1,000. That should cover free drinks for our friends in the corner for the next month. Is that enough? Yes. Luis was already on the phone speaking Spanish really fast. I watched as the dead men, at least the Guatemalans, were about to become bait for the fishermen who caught sharks for fancy dishes in Asia. I walked over to the 5 witnesses with my FNX gun in my right hand, Wendell next to me with his shotgun, and Overhauser holding an AK-47 pointed at the ground. Harper Stevens stood behind us. I picked out a tall, strong-looking man with sun-tanned skin. In Spanish, I said, I have an offer for you and your friends. He glanced at the guns aimed at him and asked, what kind of offer? You're going to go home and forget what you saw tonight, or even that you were here. Each of you will get $100 and free drinks here for the next month if you keep quiet. 4 minutes later, they left. I walked over to Maria, who was still holding Macario's bloody head. It looked like she was really crying. Overhauser had taken away all of Macario's weapons. Maria, you need to leave. Macario is gone. We're leaving, and we can take you anywhere you want. You don't have to do anything for the ride, but... He was my husband, you jerk. He was my husband, and you killed him. He didn't give us any choice. And now you're a widow, so... She screamed and tried to jump at me, but Harper Stevens caught her and held her tight. He gripped her neck firmly, and soon she went still against him. He handed her to me, and I tossed her over my shoulder. We couldn't let her run to the police and shout about how we killed her husband and his friends. Harper Stevens bent down and picked up Tommy Goldberg's body as if he were lifting a child. As we stepped outside, we checked carefully. It was close to 10 in the evening, and there were not many people on the street. We didn't see any police cars. We made our way to our Jeep parked down the road from the El Dorado. Davidson and Henry and their crew had arrived in a Lincoln Town car. Follow us. We're going to the harbor. We have a boat there to take us to a yacht that a friend lent me. It will take us down the coast. There was more space in the town car, so Maria and Goldberg's body were with Harper Stevens and the other guard. Davidson drove, while Henry rode with the 3 of us in the Jeep. As we navigated the winding streets to the waterfront, Henry suddenly said, 6 men died back there. How can you go on like nothing happened? We're not, Overhauser replied. We're just getting out of here before we end up in a Guatemalan prison or worse, killed by their friends. I waved for him to calm down. Mr. Henry, we're not acting like nothing happened. Wendell was shot and needs a doctor. One of your guards was killed, and I almost got shot too. Overhauser is right. There's no way this could end well if a widow says we attacked them. We were defending ourselves when they came after us. You're shocked because you're not used to this side of life. This is a different world, and we're used to it. You're not. As Harper Stevens said, just keep moving. Go back to your life, and this will all feel like a bad dream. He was quiet as we headed to the boat. We made 2 trips to bring everyone to the big boat that a Chinese general had let me use in exchange for keeping quiet about things that would have gotten him in serious trouble. It was a small boat, but it was fast. It had 2 bathrooms, a fully stocked kitchen with some fancy food, like shrimp stuffed with caviar in the freezer, a full medical kit, and a spot where you could lay someone down to take care of their wounds. There were only 4 beds, but if more people came, you could spread a blanket and sleep on the deck. Overhauser kept bothering me about using the right boat words for beds and things. I told him, I'm not a sailor. I can call them whatever I want, and I pay you. Got it? But he didn't back down. If he wasn't such a great oil guy and good with a gun, I might have let him go. But his help was worth a bit of irritation. He had also been a medic and was skilled at fixing injuries, dealing with broken limbs, and other problems you could run into far from a hospital. He gave Maria a shot after laying her on one of the beds. Fine, bunks. She turned over and snored softly. I looked at her, her sun-kissed skin showing, and those long, thick black locks framing her pretty face. I wished she could forgive me for what happened to her husband, a real jerk. But that was unlikely. If I ever got close to her, I knew I'd be in big trouble. We'll check on her, but this should keep her asleep for 8 to 10 hours, he said. Let me take care of Wendell. He needs some help to keep breathing until we reach a clinic in Puerto Cortez, a decent-sized city just over the border in Honduras. Harper Stevens and the other bodyguard, Larry, were driving the boat while Stevens looked around the cabin. This is a nice boat, Mr. McCarthy. When I heard what happened and that you'd left the country, I thought you'd end up in a prison in Colombia. That's a fair guess. But luckily, there are enough hidden oil fields and companies eager to find them, so I've been doing well. How about you? It took me 6 months to heal from the damage that jerk Grove did to my ankle and leg, but I bounced back. He was a lucky guy. If he'd had the guts to fight me again, I would have sent him to the hospital. But he turned out to be okay. He married my sister, actually. He's a constable in London now. I joined the bank instead, better pay and benefits. I have a 17-year-old daughter at NYU. She's going to do great things. She'll be as far from her father as possible. I think she'll get into the diplomatic service and never have to deal with danger. She'll go much further than I ever imagined. For such a tough-looking guy, he seemed almost soft for a moment. There's something about kids that makes big men feel that way. I felt a deep sadness inside me for a moment. I pushed the thought back into the dark where old hopes hide. I heard someone coming and saw Overhauser standing there. Let's go below deck and get you patched up, boss. I had been pressing a cloth against my cheek, but it was soaking red. I kept wiping the blood from my scalp into my left eye. We started walking toward the bunks, but Overhauser pulled me to the small clinic with a bed. I gave the girl some medicine to help her sleep, and I gave Wendell some strong pain pills. He's a bit out of it. I hope he can rest before we reach the clinic in Puerto Cortez. He really needs it. I can take care of you in here. I sat down on the bed and lay back, closing my eyes. He took the cloth away from my cheek, and it hurt a lot because the blood had made it stick. I felt something sting as he cleaned the cut with alcohol. That's a nasty cut, boss. I'll do my best, but it might leave a big scar once the doctors work on it. Great, that ruins my chances at being a movie star. He laughed. I hate to tell you, but you weren't exactly movie star material before Macario shot you. Just do what you can. I don't want to look like a ghost. I'll use some special strips and let the doctors do the proper stitches. I'll put some pain cream on it first, but it's still going to hurt. I can handle pain. I wasn't laughing when he finished, but it wasn't too awful. He cleaned the blood from my head and then shaved a bit of my hair. He put several long Band-Aids from the back of my head to the front. These are just small cuts on top. I think the Band-Aids will stop the bleeding, and by morning it should start healing. We sat quietly, feeling the yacht rock as the engines pushed us through the waves in the early morning. I could hear the water hitting the boat and a buoy ringing somewhere in the dark sea. Michael. I opened my eyes. He rarely called me anything but boss, and when he did, it was serious. We've been through a lot together in the last 5 years, haven't we? It's been fun, but if it weren't dangerous, your wife would have to get a real job instead of volunteering at the animal shelter. He smiled. He didn't often talk about his wife, but when we were lucky to meet nice women, he always passed up those chances. Some of those chances had been very tempting. I can't explain it well, but this feels different. I have a bad feeling. It's hard to feel good when there are bodies dropping around us. It's more than that. I don't know what's in that briefcase Davidson is carrying, but I have a guess. I think you do too. It's money. A lot of money. I nodded. Yeah, I think it's a lot of money. I've heard that you burned a cashier's check for $10 million. That sounds crazy, but it's not crazy. You really burned $10 million? A cashier's check that can't be traced? Yes. Why would you do that? I had my reasons. Maybe you weren't thinking straight? My reasons, Ben. I don't think you will get it. I don't expect anyone to get it. These are my reasons. Do you think she sent you another check? I don't see any other reason that Davidson and Henry are here with that briefcase. How can you trust anyone? A free $10 million would tempt any banker or lawyer. We don't know much about the bodyguard, and Stevens has a daughter he could help if we all disappeared. I'd trust Wendell with my life, but $10 million untraceable dollars? Even I would think about it. I have a life in Tampa. It crossed my mind. Everyone has probably thought about it. That's why we need to wrap this up. I stood up a bit shaky, but managed to stay steady. Go find Davidson and Henry, Stevens, and the other bodyguard. Bring them to the den. He looked at me strangely, but just shook his head. He knew what I meant. The den was in the middle of the yacht, with a couch, several chairs, a pool table, and a fully stocked bar. I walked to it and checked my watch. It was 2 a.m., the perfect time to end this bad drama that Deirdre had begun. Burn the check to ashes, if it even existed, and all the doubts and worries on the yacht would disappear. Davidson and Henry walked in with Overhauser. Davidson looked sharp, like he was ready for the office, with neat pants and shiny shoes. Henry was in bare feet and looked like he just woke up. He was far from the sharp lawyer I had seen in Bailey's office 5 years ago. "I'll go get Stevens," Overhauser said, carrying an AK-47 on his shoulder. Before he could leave, the other bodyguard, Larry, a tall, slim guy with a .45 gun on his hip, stepped in. I left Stevens at the wheel. He said he'd already seen this once and I might enjoy it more. I sat on the couch and waved for Davidson and Henry to sit down too. Overhauser stood behind the pool table where he could see us and Larry. Davidson placed the attaché case on the table between us and reached into his coat pocket for a small key. He unlocked the handcuff and then used a second key to open the case. He popped it open. Inside were 2 envelopes. I thought I knew what was in one, but had no clue about the other. I picked up the second envelope, which was thicker and had writing on the outside. I flipped the envelope over to see the writing. "Michael, please read this. Deirdre." "What is this?" I said, throwing the letter at Davidson. Davidson caught it in the air. "Miss Lancaster asked us to give this to you. She hoped you'd read it." "And why would I read anything from her?" "I don't know. She just wants you to read it." "Forget it." I grabbed the thinner letter and tore off the top. I tapped it and a folded check slipped out. I didn't need to open it. A $10 million check looks just like any other $10 million check. Anyone got a lighter? "McCarthy, think before you act. I know you have problems with your ex-wife, but you could really use this money right now. Don't let your pride get in the way. I found out you lost $2 million this year. I don't know what you have saved up, but $10 million could help you. Mr. Davidson, I respect your banking knowledge, but you don't know everything. Yes, I lost $2 million this year, but I made $3 million last year. So maybe I'm down to my last million, or maybe I have more saved up. But if I had only $5 left, I would throw that check back at Deirdre and tell her to keep it. I'm not taking anything from her, now or ever." "Still, I need to ask," Davidson said. "Are you sure about this? If you don't want the money, you could give it to charity. Maybe help Tom Goldberg's family or some of it." "Give it to the animal shelter where Carrie works," Overhauser suggested. $10 million could save a lot of stray dogs, and I looked up just as his head jerked back and a hole appeared in his forehead. Another shot rang out and a hole appeared in his left eye. He collapsed to the floor. The bodyguard, Larry, swung his gun away from Overhauser and aimed it at us. "Don't do anything stupid. I doubt any of you are armed, but Davidson, stand up and turn around. I want to check you for weapons. You're too smart. Stand up." Davidson stood slowly, turned around, opened his shirt, and turned his pockets inside out. "All right, sit down. McCarthy, it's your turn. I've heard about the small guns you carry. Stand up and show me. Don't make this hard. I might need you, so I don't want to kill you. But I'm quick, and I will shoot if I must." I wanted to try something, especially seeing Overhauser's body, but he looked ready and had clearly planned this. The tiny gun I had was all I could use. "Use 2 fingers and toss it over here. Slowly." He picked it up carefully. "That's a dangerous little gun. I think I'll take it." I glanced as casually as I could at the door where Larry had entered. He caught my eye and smiled. I wouldn't count on any help from the big guy. He's strong, But I got him with 3 shots to the back near his heart and 1 in the back of his head. That took him down. You shot him in the back? Davidson asked, getting angrier as he spoke. I wouldn't face him in a shootout. He was too big and too skilled. Plus, he was too stuck in his ways to see that we should work together for the money. It made more sense to just get rid of him. I tried my best to keep a blank expression, hoping he couldn't read my thoughts. He smiled at me, but his hand on the gun was steady. And McCarthy, you're worrying about your friend Wendell with the shotgun. He might have been a problem, but I went down there first. I stabbed him in the heart and cut his throat just to be safe. Then I covered him with a blanket. He tried to fight back, but he was too sleepy. Right then, I made up my mind. I might die, but I was going to take this guy down first. Oh, and I hated to do it, but your girlfriend, the black-haired woman from the bar, had to be dealt with too. I cut her throat and covered her with a blanket. She didn't wake up. Not much of a loss, but she did have a nice body. I started to stand up when Davidson grabbed my wrist and his grip felt strong, not like an old man. Don't. You'll just get yourself killed. The bastard. There are only 3 of us left. That's right, Larry said with a grin that made me want to hurt him badly. You 3 are alive because I might need 1 or 2 of you. I don't think I need all of you. You never know, Davidson said calmly. It would be a shame to do all this, kill all those people, and then take out the 1 man you need for this plan. We are not armed. We won't cause you any trouble. I hope not, Pops. If I have to, I can always blow up this yacht, escape in the motorboat, and send all your bodies to the bottom of the ocean. I'm keeping you alive for my own reasons. His eyes glanced at the check on the table. Henry, you're the weak one, so you pick up the check and bring it halfway to me. Drop it on the carpet. Then go back to the couch. Do it slowly. No fast moves, and make sure you don't block my view of the other 2. I think you're the one I need the least. Henry did exactly what he was told, dropped it, and then backed away. Larry leaned forward, keeping his eyes on us. He opened the check, and I could see his eyes widen a bit. $10 million. $10 million. Cashable anywhere. He ran his finger over the front, like he was trying to feel what $10 million was like. So, you won the lottery? He looked at Davidson. I'd say so, Pops. Even if I had to make a deal to get money fast, I would still get millions. I don't want to ruin your excitement, but I have to tell you. I'm a banker. If you try to deal with anyone here and they think they know what you have, you won't last long. Take it to any bank and you'll be in big trouble very fast. If a government official finds out about it, you might wish you weren't alive in just a couple of days. Give it to me, and I could use my contacts to get the cash for you. I might charge a fair fee, maybe $1 million or 2, but if you come into the bank with me, I'll walk out. You won't. You'll have to hide somewhere with these 2 guys as hostages, just to make sure I come back. But what if those friends of mine aren't as loyal as I say? I could be on a plane to Jacksonville, leaving you with 2 bodies and a lot of trouble. All that for nothing. So why shouldn't I just shoot you all right now, take the check and take my chances? Davidson just looked at him. Even though he was unarmed and Larry had a weapon, I started to think that Larry was in over his head. Because if you kill us, you may as well end yourself too. But you can tie them up and leave them on the boat. Then we can take the little motorboat. By the time they are free, we will be long gone. There are places like Hong Kong and Dubai where a check like this could be cashed easily. They deal with larger amounts all the time. We'll be in a place where it won't be easy for you to kill me. You'd be better off running away with a lot of money where you can hide. Why would you want to help me? You could easily betray me. Because it's not my money. I already have more than I need. I know a woman with her own bank who would give me any money I ask for. I don't need the check. You can run if you want. Honestly, I don't care if you escape or not. All the people you've hurt were strangers to me. I'm a banker, not a police officer. I could see he was thinking about it, weighing the options. He was probably dreaming about a quiet life somewhere nice. I hated that this could very well be the last thought he'd have. Followed by a loud gunshot, his legs buckled, and he fell forward, landing face down near Overhauser's body. A huge man swayed in the doorway. As we watched, his gun slipped from his hand and his knees gave way. Harper Stevens fell hard like a massive tree. Davidson reached him first. Stevens! Blood poured out of the big man's mouth. Sorry, what a mess. Don't say sorry, my friend. You saved all of us. We thought you were dead, Henry said. He thought he'd killed you. He did, the big man said, trying to open his eyes that were filled with blood. But it's not easy to kill someone in the SAS. His eyes closed and he started to shake. Davidson held his hurt head and gently slapped Stevens's face. Stevens tried to open his eyes. Stevens, listen to me. Hold on a little longer. Your daughter, the one in college, will have all she needs to go as far as she wants. And when she steps out into the world, she'll always have the Hunt Bank and Lancaster Oil helping her. Stevens seemed to smile a bit, but I wasn't sure if he was still with us. When we get back, I'll tell her that her father died a brave man, doing his duty till the end. I think he did smile at that before he took his last breath. I moved to Overhauser, but he was already gone. Henry walked over to Larry, took his gun from his hand, and fired 4 more shots at close range into his head. Blood splattered everywhere. He was already dead. I know, but it made me feel better. I ran to the clinic, knowing what I would find. Wendell lay wrapped in his blanket, but when I unwrapped it, I saw a horrible, bloody mess. I couldn't help but think about how it must have felt for him, lying there too weak to fight back as he was killed. I went to Maria's bunk next. She was wrapped too, but when I pulled back the blanket, I saw the terrible cut on her throat that soaked into the fabric below. In death, her face looked peaceful, almost like she was just sleeping. Maybe I felt worse for her than for my friends. Wendell and Overhauser were on my team. I would have given my life for them, and I thought they would have done the same for me. But she wasn't part of our team. She might have been a woman of the night, but she didn't want to hurt us. She loved the wrong man, and if I had just left her at the bar or dropped her off somewhere, she might still be alive. I went back to the main room and found Davidson and Henry drinking some really nice whiskey. Overhauser, Larry, and Harper Stevens lay where they had fallen. They covered Overhauser and Harper Stevens with blankets, but left Larry out without any covering, as if he didn't deserve it. "There's not much we can do for them now," Davidson said. "We should get to the next port so we can hire a plane to take their bodies back." Looking at Larry, I said, "He doesn't deserve a burial. I think I'll just throw him overboard for the sharks to eat." "I think he was married," Henry said. "He might have kids. Whether we take him back or feed him to the sharks, we should keep what happened here a secret. Why make his family suffer for something they didn't do?" "Matt, if I were you, I'd find another job than being a lawyer," Davidson said. Henry looked at him, confused. Davidson continued, "You won't be a good lawyer. You're too nice. Lawyers have to be tough. It's a rule." "Some of the best people I've known were lawyers. And some of the worst," Henry said. He pointed at my empty glass and said, "Pour yourself a drink, McCarthy." I poured some whiskey and raised my glass as Davidson and Henry did the same, to absent friends. We clinked our glasses together and drank the expensive liquor as the dark waves rushed below us into the night. An hour later, I was steering the yacht. It could nearly sail by itself, but I had some experience. We were approaching busier waters in a city where we needed to arrange to send some bodies back home, so we had to be careful. We had radar and sonar as well as radio, but sometimes it helped to just look out at the sea. I thought I would have some time to think about everything that had happened, but Davidson came up behind me. "Mind if I join you?" "No, I thought you'd be getting some sleep," I replied. "I don't need as much sleep as I used to. Besides, I wanted to talk to you about a few things. As long as they're not, Deirdre Lancaster and Julian Gutman got married 3 months after you left the States. I respect my elders, so I won't hit you. But if you don't leave soon, I'll try my best to make you. You probably could, but you can't remove Deirdre from your mind. Is that what this is about? Did she ask you to make sure I know how her life is going? I know she's important to the Hunt Bank, but how far are you willing to go for her?" "It's not like that. Just let me talk for a couple of minutes and then I won't say another word. She tried to get me killed with that stupid check and now she's ruining my peace of mind. Go on. Next I'll be chased by bounty hunters, but make it quick. She and Julian got married 3 months after you left. She filed for divorce a year later after many public affairs on his side. Before the divorce was finished, even after she offered him $1 million settlement, he hired a hitman to kill her. The hitman was actually an undercover cop. Gutman, the fool, panicked when they arrested him and shot the undercover officer, killing him. He was charged with first-degree murder of a police officer and a plot to kill the owner of a $250 million company. The state attorney didn't offer a deal. He was just found guilty and received the death penalty. He's in Rayford now and will probably be there for a long time since they are phasing out the death penalty. I can't say how I know this, but reliable sources tell me that he's having more sex than he ever has before, though I doubt he's enjoying it much. He is a good-looking man. I stared at the dark water below and tried to feel good about the thought of Gutman being used every night by guys who probably didn't care about him. But that didn't help. It just made me feel sad about everything that had been lost. I've burned the check and the letter from her. Now I know how her life is going. Can you do me a favor, Davidson? When we reach land, I'm going to talk to a local church to give Maria a nice burial if they can't find her family. I will take Windell and Overhauser's bodies back to their families. You take your bodies home, and tell Deirdre to leave me alone and forget about me. I don't want her to get any more innocent people hurt. You know that if you had cashed that check 5 years ago, none of this would have happened, right? Yeah, I know, Davidson. That makes this even harder, but I just couldn't cash it. He placed his hand on my shoulder. I get it. I really do. Probably more than anyone else. But that doesn't make it easier. That's the tough part of life. You always have to face the results of your choices, no matter how long it takes for you to see them. July 23, 2014. I landed at Jacksonville International Airport for the first time in 10 years. The sun was shining, and it was 92 degrees outside. As we circled the airport, I saw dark thunderclouds forming in the distance. I had forgotten how the summers worked in Jacksonville. It was hot during the day, like a thick blanket on your face, followed by loud thunder and wild storms that were amazing to watch if the lightning or strong winds didn't hurt you or damage your home at night. I rented a car, took care of some business, then bought flowers and visited Evergreen Cemetery. I found the graves without much trouble, though the old cemetery had grown and added more sections since I was last there. The headstones marked the resting places of Eileen and Patrick McCarthy. I bought vases for the roses I got for Mom, her favorite flowers, and the sunflowers that Dad, a big, strong Irishman, said were his favorite, because they were also his mother's favorite. I thought the grave sites might be a bit sad. Evergreen was well kept, and the owners took care of it. But it had been a long 10 years since I had visited, and I was the only one there to remember them. They looked nice, and vases were already at each grave, although the flowers inside had faded and wilted. I looked around, but there were only a few visitors far away. I knew that sometimes church groups would come and show kindness to the forgotten graves, making them look better and leaving flowers behind. Whoever helped me, I was very thankful. I planned to just leave the flowers and be on my way. But I ended up sitting there for an hour. I couldn't remember my thoughts later. I wasn't sure if I even thought in words at all. I just felt deep sadness and loss. I mourned for a life and things that mattered to me, now lost forever. With most of the day free, I drove around downtown. Soon I found myself heading down US 17 South. I took an exit and drove onto a busy road that took me back in time. Many buildings, like the old pharmacy and a few small shops on the left, looked just the same. On the right, O'Brien's had grown, taking over a couple more stores than I remembered. It had been a big place when I used to go there often. I wondered what O'Brien had done with the extra space. It was only a little before 7, so there were plenty of parking spots. I pulled into one by the curb and walked to the front door. The sign still read, O'Brien's, in shining gold letters. The doors had changed. They now looked like the old wooden swinging doors from Western movies. Glass above the wooden design made it look fancy. An electric eye opened one door to let people in and the other to let people out. There were 2 more doors at the end of the bar. One had steps and a railing for those with disabilities, and the other was a ramp for wheelchairs. Everything seemed more polite than before. But things do change. I pushed the door and it opened. I stepped inside and took a look around. The long wooden bar seemed even longer than I remembered. It was clear the place had grown. There were tables for people to sit and drink, a large space for dancing, and another area for pool and some video games. Even though it was getting darker outside, the bar was mostly empty, but that was normal for a Wednesday. Across the room, I noticed a big sign on the wall that said, "O'Brien's Late Night Eats." That was where the extra space had gone. He had taken over the shops next door and turned it into a restaurant for night owls and late-night partygoers. The doors were also easy to access for everyone, but I bet he had a way to lock them with a button from behind the bar. In the past, fights were part of the bar's appeal, but you couldn't have those spilling into the restaurant where people were eating. He had the best of both worlds, loud bar vibes on one side and a calm eating spot on the other. "Are you here to check things out, or do you want a drink?" The blonde bartender's words were a bit harsh, but her pretty face and golden hair made me ignore her tone. I walked over to the bar and leaned in to see more of her. She wore hot pants that hugged her curves, and her legs seemed to go on forever, ending in tall platform heels. "How tall are you?" I asked. "Has anyone told you that you're a bit too nosy? Ask me about our drinks and I'll share. And keep your eyes off my legs." Her tone was still tough, but there was a sparkle in her eye. "I like this little dance we were doing. You're about 6 feet tall, and with those heels, I'd guess you're a showgirl or something. Las Vegas? New York? Private clubs? Sorry for staring, but you look great." She didn't seem offended by my words. A woman like her was probably used to compliments. "Are you going to order a drink?" That's what most folks do in bars. "Coors, please. In a glass." "That's how we serve it." She turned and grabbed a bottle from under the bar, bending slightly. I had to keep myself from saying something silly. She poured the beer expertly, filling the mug to the brim without spilling. Then she looked at me with a playful smirk. "You must really love your Coors." "Yeah, I guess so. I like beautiful things, and Coors is one of them." She let me enjoy the first sip of icy beer before she said, "Are you a pirate?" "What do you mean?" She pointed at the scar on my face, tracing it lightly with her finger. It had once been bright red, but now showed a darker color from the sun. "It gives you a pirate look or a tough guy look." "Not a pirate, but a tough guy for sure. You can touch it if you want." That almost made her smile. Does that line ever work? "About half the time." "You must be around some pretty clueless women. I think you'll be let down here. Most of our female customers are too smart for that." "That's fine. I'm not interested in your customers, but the staff? That's another matter. Sorry, our waitresses don't date during work hours. It tends to lead to distractions. What they do when they're not working is their own business." "I was thinking more about bartenders," he replied. She just shook her head. "How old are you?" she asked. I looked her up and down. As I focused on her face and neck, I realized she wasn't as young as I first thought. But she was still a beautiful woman. "I'm 38, but you look like you've held back the years. Are you 45, maybe 50? I'm not looking for a mother figure, and I'm not hunting older women, but how about a cup of coffee next door during my break?" This time, she smiled. "I'm closer to 60 than 50, and if I had children, you could be one of them. Older than I thought, but I'm not asking you to marry me. Just a cup of coffee and a chat? What can it hurt?" She leaned in toward me, and her figure looked even more flattering. "But what's the point? You seem like a man who doesn't like small talk. I've met guys like you before. A cup of coffee or a drink always leads to something else. You're used to getting what you want, but that won't happen tonight." "Even if that were true, would it be so bad? You seem interesting beyond your looks, and I have stories to share from a colorful past that might entertain you. I might never come this way again. Haven't you heard, 'What happens in Jacksonville stays in Jacksonville'?" I smiled, knowing many women have told me that my smile is my best feature. "And can you truly say, when I'm gone, you won't be at least a little curious about what could have happened?" "If you don't stop flirting with my wife, McCarthy, I'm going to throw you out of this bar." I turned around on the bar stool to see O'Brien ready to take a swing at me. "O'Brien? Your wife?" I asked, surprised. He just grinned back at me. I stepped forward, wrapped my arms around him, and spun him around. With me being taller, I lifted him off his feet. We both hugged each other, and he finally said, "Come on, Mike, put me down. This is embarrassing." I let him down. He had changed. He looked older than before. He still had most of his hair, but it now had some gray in it. He had put on a little weight, but his strong arms reminded me of the fighter he had once been. Even when I was a young man passing through his bar, he was long past his fighting days. No young guy would dare to challenge him. I glanced over at the blonde woman. She smiled at him warmly. Really, your wife? He leaned closer to the bar and she bent down to kiss him softly. It should have made them laugh, this tall, beautiful woman leaning down to kiss the shorter, strong man, but it didn't feel funny. My wife. And I'm glad I saw you before I made a mistake. Don't mind him, she said. He's used to men trying to flirt with me. That's why he has me wear this outfit. He knows I can take care of myself. And now, O'Brien, can you please introduce me to your charming friend? Sorry, sugar. This is Michael McCarthy, the son of an old friend who basically grew up in this bar. She reached out and shook my hand. It's nice to meet you, Michael. Why haven't I seen you here before? I paused for a moment and replied, I've been away for a long time. Sugar, get me a beer. And you, Michael, tell me what you're doing back here. It's been way too long. She sat on a stool next to me, took the cold beer she handed him, and turned to me as she went down the bar to serve the 3 new customers. He tapped his mug against mine and said, To old friends and bad pennies that keep showing up. I'll drink to that and to people who never seem to age. Honestly, I expected you might be gone by now. It's been such a long time. Instead, you found one of the most lovely ladies I've ever met. It must be a friendly marriage, considering your age and everything. He playfully tapped my chin with his fist, still quick enough that I couldn't block him, and said, Yeah, it's friendly for sure. Sometimes we're friendly 2 or 3 times a night. Actually, I shouldn't joke. I don't have those 2 or 3 times anymore, but once usually works just fine. You're quite a guy, O'Brien. You give me hope for when I get as old as you. He took a big sip of his golden beer and wiped the foam from his lips. What brings you back to town, Mike? Davidson told some of us what happened and that you weren't planning to return. I doubt anyone held it against you. A high school friend of mine passed away about a week ago. His family sent me a message to come for the funeral tomorrow. I also wanted to visit my parents' graves. There are a few other things I need to do, maybe stay an extra day, then I'll be gone. I'm glad I got to see you and meet your lovely wife because I probably won't be back. There's nothing here for me anymore. He looked down the bar where Sugar was playfully chatting with the 3 new customers. His eyes sparkled. So, what have you been up to the last 10 years, or at least the last 5? Same thing I was doing when Davidson and Matt Henry surprised me in Guatemala. Over the last 10 years, I've been to around 50 countries and all 7 continents. I've landed in more foreign airports than I can count. I have been through a few storms and had to run for safety in places like Ukraine, Congo, and Myanmar. I faced some tough illnesses like dysentery, yellow fever, and malaria. I've been shot twice since Guatemala and stabbed once. I've also had 2 emergency airplane landings. Just the usual kinds of adventures, I guess. On the bright side, I've seen amazing waterfalls that shoot up hundreds of feet, maybe ones no one else has ever seen. I've floated over what looks like the lost city of Atlantis, but is really just coral that ships have not reached. Once I was alone in a small boat in the Indian Ocean while a big great white shark swam around me. O'Brien shook his head and took a drink. Wow, Mike. You make me wish I was young again so I could join you. I looked at the entrance where people were starting to come in. There were a few older couples, but mostly younger ones and singles. The guys tried to look cool as they checked out the girls, who were mostly in groups. They were there for music, drinks, good times, and maybe a chance for a fun night. Everything felt sweet and innocent. Even though the guys felt a bit down about themselves, the girls in their short skirts and revealing tops seemed excited and full of promise. They wanted to seem daring, but they were just young and enjoying life. Watching all of this made me feel very old. It was like I was from a different time or place, looking back. It might sound dreamy, O'Brien. Sure, there are good moments, but mostly it's about pain, fear, and working nonstop on projects that often fail. It's eating in strange little restaurants that leave you feeling sick for a day. It's always feeling like an outsider. Then why do you do it? He asked. I love it. I'm good at it. And I don't know how to do anything else. Is it about what you can do or what you want to do? Pretty much the same. Have you thought about settling down somewhere, Mike? The world is big with many beautiful cities and women. There are oil companies everywhere, too. Not really. A city is just a city, no matter how pretty. When you can live anywhere, it doesn't matter much. And there are always women, but they are just women. A knowing look crossed his face. He didn't need to say much, but he did. You've never found the one. I did, but I lost her a long time ago. He waved to Sugar, and she came over from her group of admirers. Let's both have another round. Don't get those guys too excited, or they'll jump over the bar to get to you. She gave him a light pat on the head. You know I'd just toss them back over again. She filled our drinks again and leaned on the bar. So, Michael, how did you get that big romantic scar? A man was trying to kill me. I ended up killing him. She looked from her husband to me and asked, Does that happen a lot in your job? Luckily, not too often. Now it's my turn. One of you tell me how you two got together. I'm really curious how an older guy managed to get such a beautiful wife. It can't just be his looks. No, it was his money. I figured it had to be something like that. O'Brien gave me a playful swat on the back of the head. Watch your words, McCarthy. I'm not that old. She reached out to touch his worn hand that had hurt many men. No, I had mostly retired to Miami. You retired? Were you a showgirl? For a few years, in Vegas and New York, I went to school at night, got my accounting degree, and started handling money for some of the girls I worked with. Then I started a successful business for other women who needed escorts. She stopped when she saw my surprised face. Not that kind. There are always rich men who want a pretty woman by their side at dinners or nightclubs. I kept my business clean enough to avoid trouble. I told my girls, if you want to sleep with them, that's up to you. But don't do it on the job. Do it on your own time. She gave O'Brien a look that almost made me believe they were a real couple, even if it seemed unlikely. I moved into talent management for a while, got married twice, and divorced 3 times. I finally decided I didn't need more money. I wanted a place by the water where I could walk on the beach in shorts and bare feet. I found it, and I was happy. She pointed to O'Brien. Then he showed up and changed everything. I laughed. I can totally believe that. Tell him the whole story, Sugar. How did you get so lucky to find the man you wanted all your life? She rolled her eyes. I hadn't seen my brother in years, and heard he and his wife were having problems. I came to see what I could do. But this guy had already saved his marriage, and maybe his life too. O'Brien shook his head. Chris is a friend of mine from 30 years ago. His wife called me and said they were having trouble. I didn't do anything special. I just sat him down and talked like an old friend. I gave him some advice, and he and his wife worked things out. I'm just glad it led to meeting Sugar. My brother told me what happened, and I wanted to meet this guy before I went back south, so I walked into O'Brien's one Friday night, and things just happened. The way they looked at each other made it clear they shared a special bond. This was last year? O'Brien, you sure are quick, she said. We got married 2 months after that first night, she added. Neither of us are young anymore, McCarthy, O'Brien replied. At our age, you realize life is short. When you find someone special, you don't want to say goodbye. You traded a nice beach for a job in a smelly bar? That has to be true love, she teased. It's not about the job, it's about the person. She's my partner in this place, he explained, taking her hand again. She's not just a bartender, Michael. She invested and became a partner. We did some work to improve the bar. It was her idea to start the late-night dining. And there are beaches just 20 miles away, she added. We have a condo at Jack's Beach for those days I feel like digging my toes in the sand. I even convinced him to hire a real assistant manager so he only works 4 nights a week. I thought about asking him to retire completely with me, but this bar means too much to him. I'm happy for both of you, but I have to ask, with you being so tall and O'Brien being, well, shorter, how do you two, you know? She smiled softly. He's tall enough to reach all the good spots, she said. O'Brien turned red. I've met sailors who told me there are feelings you can't explain. Sometimes, even with clear skies and calm winds, you stand on a ship and suddenly feel a strange sensation. It starts low in your back, climbs to your stomach, and the hairs on your neck stand up in fear. Even when all looks calm, you can sense a storm rising over the water. Your ship feels different beneath you. They called it the dark seas. They warned that if you ever feel that way, you should run or get to safety because trouble is coming. When I asked why I'd never heard of it before, they said simply, those who didn't run didn't make it to tell the tale. I had never heard of such feelings on land, but I felt it now like a cold wind sweeping over me. I looked at my old friend and said, "You need to call the police right away, O'Brien. I know you used to be a fighter, but that was 40 years ago. When this is done, I'm going to hurt you." Sugar's face showed clear worry, which meant she believed me. "When this is all over, you can take the first swing," O'Brien said. "It's been 40 years, but no one has ever knocked me down. You can try, Michael, but there are things you don't know that you need to know. If I get hurt, it will be worth it." "Hi, Michael." I turned to see someone I wished I could forget. 10 years had changed her body. She was curvier now, with more weight on her hips and chest. A few lines marked her face, but the scars from the accident nearly faded away. Her hair was still bright red, moving around her head like fire. She looked like an upset goddess ready to strike with lightning. She wore a simple red dress cut lower in the back than in the front, showing off her long legs. "Why are you here, Deirdre? Why can't you just leave me alone?" She stepped closer, and I stepped back without thinking. "I know what happened to your friends 5 years ago. I'm sorry. I never meant for any of that to happen. If you don't believe anything else I say, believe that." "I don't believe anything you say, including that. When you talk, you lie. Can we sit and talk?" "The short answer is no. I don't want to talk to you. Michael, please, just a few minutes. I can't waste another moment on you. No thanks." "What do I have to say to make you talk to me?" "Just say goodbye." She stepped back and sat down at one of the small tables in the bar. "Just talk to me, Michael. Let me say what I need to say. Let me help us both find closure. Then you can disappear again for the rest of your life, and I won't try to find you again. Sorry, Deirdre, or whatever name I want to call you, but I already told you I don't believe you. What will it hurt to talk? What did it hurt to see you with him at that meeting in Bailey's office? You could have done anything else, but you chose to kiss him in front of me. That hurt worse than anything. Talking to you will feel like my skin is on fire. I'm done with pain. I wish I could make you see how sorry I am for what I did. You forget I was 22 back then. He was my first love, the man I wanted to have kids with. Good luck with that." "You've never done anything wrong, Michael? Don't forget, we used to talk. I know how you were. I know what you did when you were 16, 17, and 18. I know about the woman in Cuba who hurt herself after you left her. Do you ever think about her? Or the marriages you broke apart after having your fun? You told me yourself you were pretty heartless." "I was just a kid back then, Deirdre. Being 22 and married for 2 years is not the same. You were an adult, and you knew what you were doing." I took a deep breath. I didn't want my feelings to show. "I deserved better from you, Deirdre. I was a good husband. I loved you. I trusted you. But nothing I did was enough for you. You got what you deserved." I noticed the crowd at the tables were watching us. O'Brien stood behind me. "You need some space. Let me open the restaurant for you. It's not ready for customers yet." "No need, O'Brien. I'm leaving. We'll settle this another time." He grabbed my wrist. "You've been running for 10 years, Mike. Stop now. Finish this, so you can move on and start fresh." "I haven't been running from anything, O'Brien, not from her. And in those 10 years you haven't found a woman you loved? You haven't found a place to call home? You call it living, but I see it as running." He was mistaken. I wasn't running. I was just living my life. But I thought about it. What could she do to hurt me more than she already had? If I was honest, maybe she would let me go. 10 minutes. That's all I need. I walked toward the restaurant. O'Brien went ahead of me. I felt her walking next to me, then ahead. I closed my eyes, trying to forget how she looked in that red dress. But when I opened my eyes, she was still there. The door swung open, probably because Sugar opened it from the bar. It looked like a diner that was open all night, the kind near bus stations. There was a shiny counter with coffee pots and a kitchen behind it. Plastic swivel seats lined the counter, and tables had red plastic covers. They weren't ready with napkins or silverware, but I could hear sounds from the kitchen. O'Brien shouted, "Stay in the kitchen for a bit, guys. We can open later. I have some customers who need privacy." Then he said, "It's all yours," and left. Deirdre leaned against a table, her long legs showing. "What's so important that we had to meet, Deirdre? What do we need to say to each other? Why didn't you take the $10 million the first time? Or the second time in Guatemala? Why did you offer it the second time? You know why. It didn't take me long after you left to see what kind of man he was. I realized I had been a naive girl, falling for a pretty face. The only thing he cared about was my money. I learned my father was right about him. He was selfish, full of himself, and sometimes violent. He never knew how to keep his hands to himself when women were near. I put up with him for a while. I told myself I deserved it. I had given up a good man for a guy who was only good in bed, but soon I knew I had to end it. You remember when he tried to have me killed? I should have seen it coming since he wanted to hurt you too. But the funny thing is, Julian was not very bright. He could have found easier ways to get rid of me, but he wanted to be clever and hired someone to do it. She smoothed her dress over her legs. Her actions reminded me of her curves. I had no idea you were going to burn the first check. Now I see why you did it. You were trying to say screw you in the best way you could. But after 5 years, I hoped you would have calmed down and take the money. It was the only way I could say sorry for hurting you. They call that blood money, Deirdre. Sometimes money is the only way to say sorry. It's not enough. It never was. She stood up. So this is it. We're finished. You don't believe that people can change or grow, even with your own story. Maybe people can change. Maybe you're different now, but I don't care. The sadness on her face was what I had been waiting for all these years. It felt like the right ending to my last visit to Jacksonville. I was about to leave, but I paused. She wouldn't get it unless I explained. You know how my father was. I've told you a lot. I don't know if I shared this part before he worked for your dad. He started working in the oil fields when he was just 14. By the time I was 10, he was a millionaire 3 times. But he lost it all every time. He loved that life, but he said it wasn't fair to my mom. She was a woman and a mother, and they want stability. They want a steady paycheck and a home. So he took a job with your dad. He got to travel, and Mom got the safe life she needed. It lasted only a few years before she passed, but he liked working for Orion, so he stayed. When I was a little boy, he had just lost a lot of money, and we had to spend the night with one of my mom's aunts. She was upset, and I was old enough to see that being poor was hard. He sat with me and told me the truth about money. He said money is like food or water or air. When you're starving or really thirsty or can't breathe, nothing else matters. If you have enough, you don't even think about it. He told me I'd never have to worry about money. He said, "Son, you're never going to be poor. You have my talent. I can't smell oil in the ground, but I can feel it. Some people think I'm crazy, but I know I can sense it. And you'll learn to trust your senses, too. Once you show you can do it, many people will pay you for that skill. You're right to not worry about money. Many people fight and even die for it, but in the end, it's not what matters. You can't take money with you when you go. It doesn't tell if you lived a good life. It's time that matters. What counts are your memories, the people you love, and the impact you leave behind." He knelt next to me in that strange house and said, "If I were to die tonight with only the change in my pockets, I wouldn't feel poor. I've loved your mother, and I've loved you. Everything else is just dust in the wind." I could almost hear his voice clearly even after 30 years. He was still the smartest, wisest man I had ever known, and I'd never forgotten his words. Part of why I turned down your $10 million checks was to make a point. But the real reason is that no amount of money can fix what you did to me. I don't get it. I know. You never understood. I never wanted to love you, but I did. That feeling you gave me made me want things I never wanted before. I wanted a home, a family, a life. I dreamed of exploring the world and always coming back to you. I saw our children in my dreams, a little boy with red hair and a little girl with red hair. I could picture them perfectly. It's been 10 years, Deirdre, and sometimes I still dream of them, but they remain toddlers. They will never grow up. They will never be born. They are ghosts from a life I'll never have. That's why I hate you and will never forgive you, no matter how much money you offer. You took that life from me. I moved toward the door leading to the bar. I raised my hand to knock when I felt her hand on my shoulder. Just like before, her skin felt hot. I thought she must have a really high body temperature. She touched the back of my neck and brushed her fingers over my scar. I refused to turn and look at her. "The scar makes you look tough, Michael. I wonder how many women it has attracted." I reached up to knock on the door, hoping O'Brien was waiting on the other side. So you hate me, Michael, that's fine. I'm a businesswoman. Maybe we can make a deal. If you won't take the $10 million all at once, how about I pay you in smaller amounts? I knocked on the door. If you ever come back to Jacksonville for work, you are welcome to visit my place in St. Augustine. You remember the guest rooms are nice, and Andre is still a great chef. He made duck l'orange tonight, which I remember was your favorite. I'll just charge you $1,000 for a night against your bill. You don't even have to see me if you want to stay the night. I'll keep my distance. I remember how much you liked the place when you lived there. I pushed her hand away from my face. You must be crazy, Deirdre, if you think I would get close to you by choice. You could have me anytime you want. If you asked someone to rate my services, I bet they'd say I'm worth $10,000 a night. I'm very good, and I know you can't stand me, but you'd still want me. Finally, the door opened, and I could get out. The bar was busy, but I saw Sugar and O'Brien working behind the bar. There was an empty stool in front of them. I went for it and told Sugar, "Give me 1 Coors to wash the taste of that talk out of my mouth, and then I'm leaving." I shut my eyes, but I could still feel her behind me. "Before you go, Michael, please come to my limo. I have something for you." Now she was gone, or maybe the weird feeling was gone. I opened my eyes and grabbed the mug of Coors. I hoped the beer would calm the uneasy feeling inside me. With my eyes closed, I wished magic was real, but not the kind that angry Irish goddesses use. What would my life be like if I had never gotten mixed up with Deirdre Lancaster? Maybe I would have a wife and kids and a nice home, but it wouldn't be the same because she wouldn't be in it. I took a sip of my beer and said to O'Brien, "Why do I have a bad feeling about what she's hiding from me out there? The only way to know is to go outside and see. You know something, don't you?" He shrugged. "What do you think your father took with him into the ocean that day?" I didn't need to answer because he had known my father, but I said, "He took the memories of my mother and me." "And what will you take with you when it's your time, Michael?" After a while, I stood up from the bar and went outside. It felt like a long time, and she might have already left. She was crouched next to a 2014 white stretch limo, talking to someone inside. Then she turned to me. She walked over with a sway that no other woman had ever copied. "You couldn't stay away." "Can we just get this over with, Deirdre? Tell me what the big secret is so I can go back in and drink." She had a slight smile on her face, but also an expression I couldn't read. I saw a nice young woman step out of a car. On the other side, there was a big man in a black suit. She moved aside, and I noticed who was holding her hand. Sometimes, everything changes in a moment. The world you know can disappear, and you change along with it. The boy had bright red hair like my ex-wife. He looked like a small, strong kid wearing shorts and a Jacksonville Jaguars t-shirt. "He's yours. You might not believe me, but..." I looked into my father's eyes and realized I didn't need to see proof. He was just like me, the way I looked in the old pictures my dad and mom had shown me. I didn't know how she did it, but she once said she had magic. I observed him closely. He was looking at me, holding tight to the woman who seemed to be his nanny. He wasn't scared, just careful. I understood why. I'm a big guy, and the scar on my face didn't help that. I also looked a bit rough. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the bodyguard behind him watching closely. He had a gun on his side and looked serious. When you're protecting someone with a lot of money, I get the need to be cautious. I knelt down to be closer to his height, hoping I wouldn't seem so scary. "You're my daddy," he said. "I am? I know you from your pictures. Mommy has them at home. What's your name?" "Michael Orion McCarthy. Orion is named after my grandpa." I glanced back at Deirdre. She had taken my life away. Just 30 minutes ago, I was free. I had no parents, no wife, no kids. I could do whatever I wanted because it was my life, but that was no longer the case. Now, someone else needed me. I reached out a hand, moving slowly. "I'm sorry I haven't been here, Michael." "Mommy explained that. She said you are really busy. You travel everywhere and do important things. But she said you would come one day." "I'm glad I came today, Michael. I won't leave you again." I dropped to my knees as he jumped into my arms. I tried to hug him gently. After a moment, he pulled back and said, "You're so big, Daddy." "Your grandpa, my dad, Patrick McCarthy, was a big man too, and you will be one day. Deirdre came up behind me and took his hand. It's getting late, Michael. You still need to eat, brush your teeth, and get to bed. Say goodbye to your father. Can you come home and tuck me in? Read me a story? Mommy reads me a story every night. That depends on your mother, Michael. She gave him to the nanny. I need to talk to your dad. He might come by, but you need to get ready for bed. The bodyguard and nanny helped him into his car seat, and the bodyguard took the driver's seat. As the nanny closed the door, he waved goodbye. What? How? Thunder rolled in the distance, and you could smell rain in the air. We stood under the awning at O'Brien's. The summer storms were coming, but it might take a couple of hours before they reached us from the Jack's beaches, which was usual for this time of year. She looked at me, and the wind blew her red hair around her face. How can this be happening? I could do a blood test, but we both know it might not be needed. But this doesn't make sense. No, I just don't know how to tell you without making you more angry. I don't know if that's possible. I knew you wanted kids, Michael, but I still loved Julian. I thought he would come back, but you kept getting me pregnant. So you ended them? No, I didn't end any of the 3 times. Remember, I was raised Catholic. But with enough money, you can have the embryos removed and saved for later. What changed then? After what happened in Guatemala, I knew you weren't coming back. I had been with other men since Julian, but I never found anyone I wanted to be serious with. Then I realized I still had a part of you. I might never see you again, but I could see you in him. We lost the first embryo, but then Michael was born. And you never told me? You ripped up my letters and wouldn't talk to me at all. Even if I told you, would you have believed me without seeing him? Probably not, so what now? That's for you to decide. He's your son. I won't share custody, and if you try, I will stop you. But you can see him when you're in Jacksonville. If you want to take him on trips, that's okay. How many bodyguards will be with us? None. He's your son. And why wouldn't I just take him and disappear, leaving you to search for him? Because you're a decent man, Michael McCarthy. You wouldn't take a son from his mother. You wouldn't hurt him. You're very sure of yourself. She stepped closer as night fell and the wind kicked up dust in the street. Behind me, I could hear the bar, but it felt like we were the only 2 people in the world. You remember that tape you played in Bailey's office that day? I told you I had feelings for you. That was true. I didn't want to love Julian when I met you, but I did. I didn't want to hurt you, but I did. That doesn't change what I know about you. I turned to go back inside, back to the laughter, the music, and the drinks. I wanted to leave behind the heavy talk about all the things that had gone wrong in my life. Michael. What? I just want something to make me feel better. Can you come to the estate tonight? Michael will be really sad if you don't come, and I need you to sign some papers. Papers. All my doubts came rushing back. Guardianship papers. I want you to agree to be Michael's guardian. I looked back at her. What does that mean? If something happens to me and I die before Michael turns 21, I want you to take care of him. You would control his money and my company. I hope it won't come to that, and you won't have any duties as long as I'm alive. But I just stared at her, feeling confused. You're the only man I know who doesn't care about my money or my company. If I die, I trust you will take care of Michael because he's your son. I had just opened the door when she spoke again from behind me. My limo left. Can you give me a ride to the estate? There's a storm coming tonight. Andre has outdone himself with a special dish. He knows how much you enjoy his cooking. This way you can have a good meal, say goodbye to Michael, and we can finish our discussion. I closed the door and walked her to my rental car. Inside the bar, 2 pairs of eyes watched the man and woman enter the car. What do you think, sugar? O'Brien asked. He's lost. Hey, audience! If you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.